Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm Michael Noland. You know, last year was a really big year for Beatles releases. We got 2 albums from them. Not only that, but 2 double albums expanded to triple albums and a wonderful brand new single. Now, I've covered that quite extensively while all of that was happening, and I'll leave a couple of those videos at the end of my video tonight, as well as pin one right up here for you guys to peruse in case you didn't catch those. Now, the only problem with what was going on last year for me was I, like maybe most of you, thought that we were going to be getting a remixed Rubber Soul album. Now, when we didn't get that, most of us are now expecting that we're going to get that remix this year. But is that exactly what we should be expecting? You see, next year in 2025, that album turns 60, and a release next year makes much more sense to me. And since the Beatles have already thrown us a curveball with last year's release, why not one more time to really properly set up a anniversary release and remix of Rubber Soul? The only problem is, what would they release this year? I have a contender for you folks. How about a brand new remixed version of Yellow Submarine? Now, the only problem with that is which Yellow Submarine album am I even talking about? In fact, will the real Yellow Submarine please stand up? All right, so the original release of Yellow Submarine was in 1969. Now, that was a full year after the film had already hit the theaters, folks. And the starting of this album went back much further than that. It has its ties to the recording of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It has its ties to Magical Mystery Tour. And it has its ties to, of course, the film itself. And it was originally not even going to be the album, just another thing it has in connection with Magical Mystery Tour. This was supposed to have been a 7-inch EP release with 5 songs. But due to the fact that EPs did not sell well in the United States, the company held back those recordings due to the White Album's imminent release and everything. And what we got eventually was an album produced just for the sake of producing an album. As a matter of fact, folks, in my video where I ranked the 13 Beatles albums, of course, Yellow Submarine was absolutely at the bottom of that list. So why would I suggest to re-release this album? Well, this album is not the album I'm talking about. I'm talking about that album. What, that album? Of course, I'm talking about the Yellow Submarine Songtrack. You know, what we were given in 1999. I mean, this not only had the material that we were used to with the original release, but we were relieved of an entire side of George Martin original incidental music. Instead, what we got was every single song from the movie Yellow Submarine. Well, almost every single song. You see, they decided not to include A Day in the Life because it might interfere with sales for Sgt. Pepper, even though they included Sgt. Pepper material. But minus that little mar, what we got was perhaps the 21st century's very first clear, improved, classic rock album due to the restoration of older equipment long out of service and marrying it in with the digital realm. I tell you, when I bought that album, I just bought it because I was a Beatles fan. I wasn't really expecting much from it until I put on my headphones. As a matter of fact, it was the release of this album that just really made me hypercritical of all the stereo re-releases of the Beatles albums up to and through 2009. Now, what did I mean by refurbishing older equipment and then marrying it to the digital equipment that was just really starting to come into its own right at the turn of the century? Well, I'm talking about, first of all, Peter Cobbin, who had already been an engineer for Abbey Road in Australia, but now had gotten this choice job of remixing an album, a Songtrack to the movie proper. Now, he was provided all of the tapes with only one mandate. You have a light touch. All of the elements must be preserved. Improve the sonics, but nothing more, for you are walking on hallowed ground. Now, in order to get that mandate across, he actually had to go in and start refurbishing equipment out of service that hadn't been used in decades in order to play back these tapes, in order to mix these tapes, and to get the proper levels and such. He then brought in, through Windows, all the digital technology and cleaned up each separate track. That was essential, and that was one of the things that I noticed about this remix. All background noise had to be, as much as possible, eliminated. This provided us with such a crystal clear, and for the first time on many of these songs, a true, wonderful, magical listening. Now, this album was remixed by Giles Martin in 2012. I feel it's a little bass heavy, and I have my criticisms and praises for Giles Martin, but one of the things that he's known to do is not tread very carefully like Peter was mandated to do. And I'm wondering why he has such a free leash, folks. Really, think about it. You know, I also did a video on how they ruined I Am the Walrus. I'll leave that one up here in the corner. You know, I can't believe how heavy-handed his whole approach to that remix was. It's horrid, folks. I ran a poll and the majority of you agreed with me. It's not a good mix, and this is why I'm very concerned about what we're gonna get for Revolver later on. But if somebody could harness that kid, Giles has got the talent. He's proven that. But he also deviates from time to time, and he isn't treading lightly enough as far as I'm concerned. Which leads me to, what would we get if this album was remixed? How about including A Day in the Life, and on top of that, release this as a double LP as well? You see, in its current form, it's running about 45 minutes. That's about all you could get away with if you were ever to even try to begin to release it in LP form, and adding yet another song would probably prohibit that, right? Not with my suggestion. You see, since this album also has its connections, like I said, to a couple of Beatle albums here, how about the fact that there are a couple of tracks from the White Album that would fit onto this as bonus tracks, okay? Set aside from the movie, all right? Okay? I don't even care if this album even truly represents the movie. The fact that it does, lacking one song, was a miracle, and I like that. But we can use that as a starting point, folks. And the reason I'm saying that is I've always said that George Harrison's Not Guilty does not belong on an anthology album. It belongs on a canon Beatle album, and I'll get to that in a minute. So let's drop Not Guilty onto this, as well as the alternative take of Glass Onion by John Lennon. That's the one where at the end of it you hear, "It's a goal, it's a goal, it's a goal," looped over time after time. Now, first of all, I like that mix better than the one that's on the White Album. That's my favorite version of it, right? And it is different enough, and it is good enough to be on a canon Beatle album. Now, if you more evenly disperse these, we're getting close to 60 minutes right there, and you could add alternative outtakes that weren't there, and then maybe an additional LP would be just the kind of thing vinyl buyers would be looking for. Now, I know for Beatle purists, you don't mess with the Beatle canon, but you have to remember that the Beatles canon has been messed with several times, and Magical Mystery Tour, the album, is exactly what I'm talking about there. If you're gonna go pure Beatle canon, all right, that was never anything but a double EP. But everybody loved what they did with the Magical Mystery Tour album, and I think most fans find that as canon, as they do the Yellow Submarine album, an album that should have been a double EP. So let's relegate it right there, just like Magical Mystery Tour was a double EP, and let's give it the gloss that Columbia gave Magical Mystery Tour. It's already been done, folks, but now with the new technology and with somebody looking over Giles' shoulder, like I said, very talented, but he just runs amok a little bit too much for me at times. But we could get quite a Christmas gift this year, couldn't we? All right, folks, that's the video for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. That helps disperse the video to a wider audience through the YouTube algo dragon and all that. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, but you watch it from time to time, come on in. You know, the water is fine, and all you have to do is hit that subscribe to the tribe button and then tap that top bell icon. You always got to tap that thing, because if you don't, you won't be notified of all my future videos. All right, folks, I'm Michael Noland. This is The Bottom Line as I see it. I want to hear from you folks tonight in the comments, because in the comments, we are the tribe.